Today, I'm going to take 2-layer cakes, then I'm going to make 2-layer cakes, mix them all up together, and make 88 of these blocks. It's called a Buckeye Beauty. Then I'm going to sew 24 of these blocks and make an incredible quilt. Stick with me, it's going to be a ride. I'm at Quilt Retreat with the blocks. Blue block is right over here working. Coral block and yellow block are still asleep. And purple block had to go home. Aqua and pink block were unable to make it this time. Let me tell you about the Buckeye Beauty block that I'm going to be making. I'm going to be using 2-layer cakes. It's called English Autumn by Bernartex. It's really kind of old-fashioned. I'm using a background fabric from Fig Tree. This is from the Harvest Moon line. Because I'm using layer cakes, I made a layer cake myself. I cut 10-inch squares out of the background Harvest Moon. The block makes up really easy with a layer cake. Before I do that, I'm going to take you back in time to a fabric stores, and this is us pulling fabric for this quilt. I'm at Fixin' to Quilt in Caldwell, Idaho. It is the cutest store. I need to choose some fabric. And the funniest thing happened, some of my customers were in earlier, Kathy, and they helped me select some fabric. Blue block is with me, and Kayla and Danny are here today. And this is what we came up with my customers. First, let me show you these 10-inch squares, and I needed a background fabric that was taupey or linen-y. Look what we came up with. This is Joanna Figueroa's new Harvest Moon line, and it actually is going to work out really well. It looks quite old-fashioned, so I'm really liking it. The next thing we're going to add is a scrappy border. So here is the scrappy border, just so you can see what's going on. And then I wanted a really nice border. Now look at this border. Look how this echoes the prints or mimics the prints. See these seed pods? Look right here. Look at the leaves, the little flowers. We just felt like this was really old-fashioned, and guess what? It's from the same line as the background fabric, Joanna Figueroa Harvest Moon. And then I needed a backing. We're gonna stick with that line. The look we're going for is old-fashioned, but we're gonna modern up the backing a little bit. Isn't this gorgeous? Again, this is the same line, Harvest Moon. I think it's beautiful. But look what's going to be to tie it all together. This piece, it's called Florence's Fancy. This is going to be the binding. It's some of the same colors that you'll see in the fabric. Isn't that amazing how it's blending so well? Picking up a lot of the colors. Look at this one with it. Can you see how these stripes just pop this out? That will be the binding. I'm going to buy some extra, and we will put this in with this fabric as well, so it looks like it fits with the pattern. This is the layer cake. It's rich burgundies, there's light blues, teals, and some tans and browns in it, and then there's a bunch of light colors in it that I felt were a little too pastel-y for the look that I want for the quilt, so I pulled these pastels out. Because I'm working with 2-layer cakes, I can do that. Then I wanted to add something else in to the mix, and I found this piece. I think it looks great with this. The little browns in here, or the little tans in here, really pull out these tans, and the reds are good. I'm going to add this into it, and what I've done is made several 10-inch squares and some 2.5-inch squares out of this piece so I can integrate it into the quilt. Now that I have my layer cake selected, I want to show you the block. Oh, before I do that, then I needed background. So I made another layer cake out of my background fabric because you put these blocks together like so, and I'm going to show you how to sew them together and cut them apart. But first, let's talk about this amazing Buckeye Beauty Block. It's made with 2 4 patches and 2 half square triangles. That is the Buckeye Beauty Block. It's an old classic block that has been around forever. And it was kind of funny. By the way, this is a commission quilt that I'm making, and my instructions were warm colors and pioneery looking. So I figured we should do a classic block that had been around forever. When you sew all of these together, this is what the Buckeye Beauty looks like. Then some magic starts to happen. Well, let me show you what happens when I put 4 of these Buckeye Beauties together. Look at that. Isn't that a stunner of a block? And this is what's fun. You know what's going to happen, don't you? And when you continue to add more of these blocks together, you're going to get a bunch more of squares on point and a beautiful chain pattern. I can't wait to get started constructing it. But first, I'm going to focus on putting together the units here to make the Buckeye Beauty blocks to make these. I'm going to need 24 of these blocks to put together for this quilt. Then we're going to have a lot of fun with the borders. I'm going to add a scrappy border because I figured out I have enough of the colored blocks. Stick with me, I think you're going to like it. I want to share the cutting guide with you. So, you know, I've come to my retreat and I forgot the directions for this quilt. Luckily, I had a picture of it on my phone. So I figured it out. And then I used the cardboard on the back of the layer cake to take notes to figure out how many of everything I needed. I'm going to show you how I put the layer cakes together. Face up, right side, face down. So the right sides are together. I centered as much as I can on the lines. I'm going to use the lines on the mat to get those first 2 crosshairs drawn, just like that. Then I use these and I mark this line. And again, these lines that I'm drawing are the cutting lines to get my 8 half square triangles. I place a couple of pins in them to hold them while I stitch, and then I put them in the stitching pile. And I'm just going to work on a pile of these, take them to the machine, sew them up, then we're starting the cutting, trimming process. You know how it works. I want to show you on actual fabric, rather than just the cardboard template, how I make the half square triangle. Sometimes you need to measure twice and cut once, right? So after I mark and sew my pieces together, right sides facing right sides, I cut them. Boom, boom. You get this unit. This one isn't cut yet. And then you take one of the units and cut them again on the dotted line, and I get 2 half square triangles. I want to square it up. One of my favorite square up rulers is the Quilt in a Day half square triangle square up ruler. The one that I like the best goes to 6.5 inches. And if you'll notice, on this side, all of the lines are dotted, and on this side, well, they're solid. So the dotted lines are the 1/2 inch, and that's good when you're cutting these. You can make sure you have the right one. But it's so simple. You simply lay the ruler line right on top of the stitching line, following it right here, and then you cut the excess off. Sometimes you take a lot off, sometimes you take a little off, but you always end up with a perfect half square triangle. You take it to the pressing table and press to the dark side, and voila, this is what you have. And I've run out of my background fabric and you can't get it anymore, so I am just using this as a demonstration piece. The other way to cut up the layer cake, you know, a layer cake is going to cut into 2 5-inch pieces, and then you can cut those into 2.5-inch strips. Or you can just cut a 2.5-inch strip off of the layer cake. It really doesn't matter how you cut it, one way or the other, as long as you end up with 4 2.5-inch strips by 10 inches. And then you're going to take a piece of your layer cake. Let me see if I have a short one. Lay it on, stitch it at 1/4 inch. When you cut it off here and cut 3 times, will give you 4 2.5-inch squares to make your 4 patches with. Now you know how to cut your layer cake bits into little bits. Hi, I am yet in another location, and this location is my dining room. I'm here with Blue Block, as you can see, in the yellow shirt right here. She is helping me with this quilt because, you know what, there's a lot of pieces and there's a lot of sewing. Plus, this is a commission quilt and it's going to a friend of ours. I have here a stack of 4 patches, a stack of trimmed HSTs or half square triangles, and we're putting them together in units like this, sewing them to get the block. And then we have a, look at this. I'm so excited. We have a stack of the finished block, and I'm going to be taking you upstairs to my sewing room so we can put it all on the design wall and figure this quilt out. And that's going to be shortly, but for now, let's just do some speed sewing. We have got all of the units sewn together, and now I'm going to match them up. Whoops, don't want to do that one, that's the same fabric. But I'm going to match them up and give them to Patricia to start sewing. There we go. What do you think of that? Or, nope, can't do that. Those two were the same. Okay, there is one done. Got to get through all of these now. Isn't that just a beautiful block? I think it is so cool, and I can't wait to show you how I'm going to put these together, then finish it and really enhance it with the borders. That is going to be fun. I think we should do this in fast time. Here it is in all its glory. I give you the humble Buckeye Beauty, made from layer cakes. Isn't it just the coolest? Now, I've got 4 of the Buckeye Beauty blocks in each of the large blocks, and these came out to measure 16 inches across. So it was pretty easy to figure out the size of the quilt. I'm going to sew these blocks together real quick so I can attach borders. And I have to tell you, I ran out of fabric. I called the fabric store and they were totally out of this fabric, the background fabric. I'm a little bummed because I was going to put a small 2.5-inch border all the way around this so the center really floated. But I've come up with some other fabric. Let me get this sewn together and I'll show you what it is. I think you're going to like it. I finally made it. We're here doing the borders. Let me show you what my original plan was. Do you see this fabric, this white, or it's the background fabric, and it's not really white, it's a cream. I ran out. I completely ran out of that fabric. I couldn't believe it. And I thought, well, no problem. This was going to be my border for the quilt. And you know, the design on this matched so well with so many of the prints in there. I thought it was perfect. However, I put this up right here next to this, and I'm still kind of whining about it because a border out of this piece would be perfect. This whole interior would float. It would be so awesome. Not going to happen. I called the store. They're out of it. I want to get this done. I don't want to spend any more time playing around with the border and ordering fabric via the mail. Then I thought, no problem. I'm going to put this border up. And you know what? It just wasn't working. This is my scrappy border that I've got going on here. I tried putting my scrappy border right next to the quilt. Wasn't feeling the love. It wasn't working out. This is actually the backing fabric that I was going to put on this quilt. It's all from the same line, Joanna Figueroa Harvest Moon. And I thought, this is going to be perfect. But I don't have quite enough. I was frustrated. So I called on Blue Block, and she came down and gave me a quilty consult. It was wonderful. And this is what we came up with. Right here you can see it. We're going to put a thin strip of the backing. Then I will scrappy float this 2.5-inch border between them. And then I'm going to have a 4-inch border of this. This just really seemed to work, and I'm super excited about it, but I'm not going to have enough to sew a backing on it now. Well, the good news is they have some more of that at the store, but this is also what I have. 4 of these blocks left over, and my plan is to put these on the back about this level. That's my plan. Come along and I'll show you how it's done. I have my first border cut. I cut a 1.5-inch strip. I'm going to sew them all together and get those sewn on. I also want to show you how I cut the scrappy borders out of a layer cake. The first thing I do is cut the layer cake in half and then in half again. That's simple. So I cut the layer cake in half and I stack the 2 pieces together like that, and then I'm going to cut off 2.5-inch strip. I'll make 3 cuts and I will get 8 of these strips. Before I know it, I will have all of my scrappy pieces cut. What I'm including in the scrappy pieces, this is my binding fabric. I wanted a binding that was going to be bold, and I think I'll just cut a 2.5-inch strip. And then I'm going to cut this into 5-inch strip. Do you see it? Do you see the elephant in the room? Now, I know I was going to show you how to do borders, but you know what? I've shown you several times. You know how, and if you don't, I'll do it again. I want to talk about this fabulous border, however, because it really evolved. Originally, this was going to be the first border. Didn't have enough, store ran out. Then this was going to be the only border. Didn't have enough to do both borders, so I thought I could do the skinny border of this and the fat border of that. Didn't work out. Blue Block came down and consulted with me. This is her wisdom on borders. She said I needed to make them the same, meaning the thin one and the 4-inch border. And I think she's right. She says, and what you're getting when that happens is this scrappy border in the center of those, well, it's not really center, but it's in between the 2 borders, appears to be floating. Gives it more attention, a little more focus, and it just blends beautifully with the other pieces in this Buckeye Beauty. Try that next time you do a double border. Try doing it out of the same fabric. Couple of things I wanted to point out about this quilt. I started with 2 layer cakes, all these colored fabrics. Then I cut 2 layer cakes of the background fabric, merged them together, and oh my gosh, I think it made magic. I merged them together using the Buckeye Beauty Block, which I showed you earlier how to make. I just think, let's stand back and look at it. It's a beauty. I'm really loving this quilt. I want to talk about the binding. This is the binding fabric. You notice that I don't have it just on the binding. That was another of Blue Block's wisdom. She said you need to have a binding that really stands out. She was right. This fabric blends nicely. It's worked throughout the quilt. I think it's a win. What do you think? I can't wait to get the whole quilt done and quilted because that's going to be fantastic. Now I want to thank several supporters who have bought me cups of herb tea. I appreciate that so much. Here they are. Jeannie S., thank you so very much for the tea, and you have a happy tea time too. Vicky C., you're welcome. You know what? You're a blessing in my life too. Thank you. Tracy, I'm happy to show you my mistakes. Girlfriend, I make them all the time. Thank you for the 3 cups of herb tea you bought me. Dixie D., how kind and supportive of you to say so. And Joni G. and Julie Cox, thank you both for the 3 cups of herb tea that you bought me. I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone who watches my channel. If you like what you see, I'd love a subscribe or passing it on to a friend. Now I want to tell you briefly about next week's video. Let's play the bread box game. It's bigger than a bread box. It's got quilt blocks in it. It's quilted, but it's not a quilt. I can't wait to show you what I have planned for my next video. I think you're going to love it. In fact, I know you're going to love it, and you're going to use it all the time. Make sure to tune in, and until then, thank you for watching. Bye.